Howdy folks, episode 32 of the Deep Space Travel Break was recorded live on Friday, July 19th, with valued members of the channel, and it was meant to release the next morning. However, after 3 days of live streaming, I was honestly too exhausted to finish editing on time, so I'm recording this new intro after the fact, because a surprising amount of new info dropped on Saturday morning, so I'm recording some new bits that I'll sprinkle throughout the podcast. Look forward to those. Okay, take it away, past me. Howdy folks, Kanaju here, and this is the Deep Space Travel Break, where we talk all things No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky, Light No Fire, and maybe Bioshock later on if they ever announce it. Today's episode is probably going to be a pretty jam-packed one. We're talking about one of the biggest No Man's Sky developments in a long time, and easily the biggest of the year, which is No Man's Sky Worlds Part 1, version 5.0, the big summer update. We're talking the crazy new features, we're talking bugs, some issues with release, and of course speculating about Part 2, right? If there's a Part 1, there's a Part 2. To top it off, I'm recording this episode for the first time ever with a live digital audience, which means that today's episode is brought to you by the valued members of the channel. Thank you, valued members of the channel. Thank you, Schmanky and Malik. Thank you so much for your support. And if you're watching this or interested in becoming a valued member of the channel, there are some perks. It's mostly like if you want to support me type thing. But occasionally we do have extra perks like this. And if you're interested, there should be a button that says join or a link or something of that sort. But anyways, it's time to get this podcast started. So episode 32 begins now. We're talking No Man's Sky Worlds today. It's a huge release, released July 17th, 2024. Not quite on all consoles, on PC, PS4, and PS5. We'll get to that in the second part of this episode. I'm not going to read through all the patch notes. If you're interested in seeing those, I have an hour plus long video of me just going through the trailer and patch notes. I also recorded like an 8.5 hour live stream day one. That was just me going through that and then playing through the game, which was really exciting. So if you're interested in that, you can check those out. I'm just going to quickly go over the biggest bullet points because I think this update's pretty fantastic. And the craziest thing is that it's Worlds Part 1, right? So we have, first off on the list, sky and cloud rendering, right? All new cloud technology. If you saw the clouds in the Light No Fire trailer, that's how they look in No Man's Sky now. According to these patch notes, there's a greater range of cloud coverage. The rain will no longer use ambient rain effect when cloud coverage is insufficient. There's more daytime colors. Nighttime ambient lighting is more varied. It also depends on like the sky and everything like that, which is pretty impressive. Overall, I mean, for those who've been in the community a while, y'all know about Cloud Guy, fix clouds. For years, he used to pester Sean Murray on Twitter every time he would like post, essentially, because Sean, the clouds in the next trailer looked really good. And on release, they also looked really good, but not as good as that trailer. And so that guy just had it out for Sean. It was pretty funny. But he pretty much became a meme. But I don't know where he is today, but I hope he's happy with the cloud update. Because it looks really good. On top of that, we also got new water tech. People have been asking Hello Games to fix water for a very long time. And they definitely did. So water rendering's been completely overhauled. Right? It's no longer just a static, flat surface with shaders on top. It's like a simulated mesh-based system are the words they use. So that means we get waves, dynamic waves that vary with wind. We have dynamic foam and those kinds of effects. Although I haven't seen those on PS5. They look great in the trailer, but they're not on PS5 at the moment. But again, we'll talk about that. But what this means is that liquid, it varies from planet to planet, but also from time to time, right? during storms, the ocean's going to get really choppy. Whereas some planets, the air is so still that the water is more of just a flat reflective surface. It's really good stuff. They also increased watercolor variety, which I'm very happy about. There's also base parts with glass now accurately render water conditions outside, which looked really cool in the deep dive. Underwater jetpack effects have been updated. And of course, the coolest thing with the water is now you can actually land your ship on the surface of water. You'll need to unlock the aqua jets from the space anomaly and install them on your ship. But hey, that lets you land anywhere on a planet now, which we're going to talk about when we get to speculation, because that could have huge implications, or maybe none, right? And there's also a biological equivalent of that technology for living ships, according to the patch notes, which I'm sure you, or I would assume you unlock the usual way. Hello, kitten. Yes, I'm recording. Careful. Watch your step. Hi. Ah, kitten. It's okay. You can just sit down. Don't have to walk in circles. I wonder if the purrs get picked up on the microphone. That'd be kind of cute. She looks like she's ready to say something. Alrighty. Next part. General engine improvements. So besides all the updates to water and clouds, we also got updates to shadow rendering. Grass now looks way better. Stuff renders further out and looks better at greater distances. It says terrain generation's been rewritten to incorporate dual marching cubes voxel meshing, which I don't know what that means. It says it reduces vertex count and increases terrain generation speed and improves frame rate and all that. And I have to say the frame rate has been good, and the terrain does look good as well. So I don't necessarily know what it means, but I appreciate the improvement. They say network systems have been improved, although I was still experiencing some issues, but that's always typical on launch day. DLSS 3, that's a big deal for those of you with NVIDIA technology. Suscat, hello. Planetary variety. Now this is the big ticket feature. This is the thing that got people the most excited about this update and why it's called Worlds. And that's planetary variety. So planetary variety and diversity has been increased across the universe. New frozen, lush, desert, scorched, radioactive, and toxic worlds await discovery and exploration. Underlying terrain shapes have not been reset and existing planetary bases will not be moved. The chance of a world having ancient bones or salvageable scrap has been increased, and those worlds with salvageable scrap occasionally feature additional rusted remnants to collect. So that's really exciting. Obviously, so we've gotten new versions of pretty much all the base biomes, and these include new flora, new fauna. They add to the variety and all the planets that haven't been updated, which is interesting because with Origins they pretty much they changed every planet and they rewrote the rules of what the classic biomes were. In this case, they've kept a lot of the existing biomes and added these in addition to them, which is an interesting strategy, and I think it's fine because the biomes were in pretty good shape before. They've made some small tweaks. And even the old biomes really benefit from the new clouds, the new skies, the new nighttime, the new water, the new shadows, and even some of the new flora, or the new fauna. So this is great. It's what folks have been asking for years. I made a couple videos about variety this year. So to see an actual universe refresh, although it's not an entire refresh, it's a universe variety supplement. It's really great to see 8 years in. I wasn't sure if we'd see another one after Origins. I was hoping we'd see something, but this is really great, and it's cool to see how they're able to modify the universe without completely resetting everything. That said, there have been some issues we'll get to, but overall, this is the most exciting feature by far. It's always fun to find new planets to explore. I mean, that's everyone's favorite thing about No Man's Sky, right? Not everyone's, but that was kind of the initial pitch. Excuse me, kitten. All right. Another big feature are environmental effects, right? Now every planet has wind simulation, which is crazy because for 8 years we've had static trees, and then the grass would blow in the wind, but everything else was just a static mesh. Eventually, they added the ability for you to walk through like grass and small bushes, and they'd kind of move out of the way. But now we've gotten to a point where leaves will blow in the wind. So when the wind is blowing, the tops of trees are swaying. If you have rain, the rain is blowing in the wind. If you have dust, the dust is blowing in the wind. If there's water, the top of the water is being blown in the wind, right? It's creating waves. And even other particle effects like smoke and fire and those types of things, those are also affected by wind. It's an incredible simulation, and it really brings these planets to life in a way that I think people might overlook. I'm hoping they don't, because it's incredible. But it's a really cool addition, and again, it brings even the old biomes up a level. So it says here, all ambient planetary environment effects have been totally reworked, and that is true. I've been to a ton of planets, and even gravity or dissonant worlds and bubble worlds have like new effects. The visual effects for jetpack have been overhauled. Visual effects for storm crystals have been reworked, and those are really cool because, again, they blow in the wind. And it says footstep effect coloring has been improved, which I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I assume they're making them more visible. Suscat asks, what's that light blue thing glowing? Do you mean the aquarium? Or the crystal in the aquarium? It's just a bit of scenery. I could also... Oh, that's actually an even cooler scene. I think I'll do that one. Yeah, there we go. There's a little guy in the terrarium. This is a throwback to my very first episode of this podcast, which I recorded in the DSTN Grand Lodge, the first version of it. And I remember that was a terrible recording because I left the in-game audio on, and I was next to one of those floating cubes, so it was just like the entire podcast. Hopefully I've avoided that issue here, but we'll see. All right, so the next big bullet point are creatures, right? Essentially, they added a new set of bug creatures, a new set of plant-animal hybrid creatures, and a new set of living buildings, if you can believe it. Which, let me just tell you, a lot of these big updates have like at least one little piece of nonsense. I think for Beyond, it was living... No, that was Visions. It was living minerals. Last update, we got ghost ships. This update, we're getting living buildings. So, yeah, you never know what you're going to get with No Man's Sky. You can guess, you can try your best to speculate, but you never know what you're getting with No Man's Sky. All three of these new types of creatures, I've encountered all three of them. And the bugs and living buildings especially have a lot of variety to them, so that's really cool. On top of that, they've added a new type of hostile creature called the Brood Mother, or I think it's called the Vile Mother when you fight them. But it's really cool. It's a new boss battle, and it's the kind of boss battle I've been hoping for. It's a classic boss battle. You have the big boss with armor, and it has its like ranged attack and its close range, and it's an area of effect attack, and it spawns little minions, and you can get rewards from beating them. They're really cool. They're pretty much giant queen bugs, and you can spawn them. In order to fight one of these, you have to visit a world infested by the Vile Brood. I think this is Vile Brood detected when you scan it from space. And there's a bunch of like little grubs in the ground. If you pick those grubs up and you squash them, it'll summon a Brood Mother. And yeah, it's a fun boss battle. They're huge bullet sponges. They take so much damage, which is good. I'm glad they're not a total pushover like the the hungering tendrils. But I do wish they did a bit more damage. I feel like they need a bit of a buff. Because my friend, I got him to join me, and he wasn't able to do any damage. He had a weak multi-tool, which is cool. But he also wasn't in that much danger because it doesn't do too much damage. But I don't know. I know they're balancing stuff for like a wide range of players, and I have like all these S-class modules in my suit, so I don't know. But it's a really cool type of boss battle, and you can kind of spawn it wherever, and depending on the planet they look different, so it's pretty cool. 4 new cooking recipes, always fun. Biological horrors now drop cookable meat, which is cool. Minotaur now fights biological horrors, as you would expect. And a big thing is, for those of you who love combat, they've taken the boss battle UI that they use for freighters, and they've now brought it to ground-based enemies. So when you're fighting a giant sentinel walker, you'll get health bars and things like that during that boss battle. When you fight the vessel of many mouths, the hungering tendrils, the worm larvae, that will also give you the boss battle UI. And those battles have been reworked, so now they can actually spit acid. Again, they don't really do any damage. Like, I just stood there and took that acid, and it didn't damage my guy really at all. It was like zero threat. Of them actually directly physically attacking you still deals a lot of damage though. And of course the biological horrors that spawn when you destroy one are also very dangerous. But those initial spit attacks, just those need to be buffed, in my opinion. Very humble opinion. But also with the queen, the vile brood mothers, those also have the boss battle UI. So I'm hoping we see even more bosses coming soon, but I'm just glad they're making these tweaks to combat. It makes the game feel more exciting in some way. Andre Vandal says, there was a walking observatory in the old game. They were rare, but I found a couple. It was like the walking rocks, just popped up on giant legs. Oh, I know what you're talking about, Andre. So there used to be a bug, and I think it's still in the game, where because any rock on a planet can become a living rock, where it spawns legs and runs away. If you go to a building, such as an observatory, that has an Atlas Pass door, some of those rooms behind the Atlas Pass door have like terrariums in them, kind of like the one in front of us right there. And those spawn rocks as well. And so there's a small chance that one of those rocks in the terrarium becomes a living mineral. However, because that's tied to the entire building ends up growing legs and running away. You know, I'd forgotten about that. That's that's kind of funny. Yeah, I wonder if that was an inspiration for the new living buildings, or if it's just because the living buildings kind of, the big circle ones had eyes to begin with. I don't know. But thanks for sharing that, Andre. So another big addition with this update is the Liquidators Expedition, which isn't live yet. I believe it launches next Wednesday, July 24th. Is that a Wednesday? Maybe. That's what people are saying. We don't have official confirmation, but that seems to be the most likely date. And I'm assuming it's because they're waiting for everyone to have access to the update and giving people a week to just enjoy the new features without having to rush the expedition. But Expedition 14, which starts on the 24th, is called Liquidators. It says it'll run approximately 6 weeks. It invites players to join the force, the Liquidator Vanguard, as they seek to purge the universe of biological horrors, old and new, including the infestations of the vile brood. Now this is cool. It's a bug hunting expedition, essentially. And it helps explain why they reworked the hungering tendrils. So now you're going to be fighting brood mothers, you're going to be fighting hungering tendrils, I assume, probably biological horrors. There's all kinds of like organic enemies to fight on planets now, and that's really cool. So it's the perfect time to do a combat focused expedition. Rewards include like a full set of bug armor, so you can get like shoulder pads and all that stuff, including a backpack, a jetpack. You can get like these kind of gross looking trophies that are like bug heads to put in your base, posters, title patch, the usual stuff. But on top of all that, as the community fights the bugs, we'll be working towards a goal that unlocks new parts for the Minotaur exocraft for everyone. So even if you're not playing the expedition, once these parts are unlocked, you can get them from the anomaly. And these new Minotaur parts, besides looking cool, will also give you, for the first time, a flamethrower attachment for your Minotaur. Which, as you know, like the Sentinel hard frame mechs, those use flamethrowers. So now we can finally use them ourselves. And I'm really excited for that. That's going to be really cool. And it's perfect for fighting bugs, right? It's going to be really cool. Really cool. But anyway, those are the big changes. There's a Twitch campaign going on right now. If you watch people, you can earn Twitch drops, free in-game rewards. You can now customize solar ships. So if you go to the Starship Fabricator, you can build your own solar ship. They added 3 new skylight roof parts to the base building pool, which is really nice. They fixed a lot of bugs. The Quicksilver Synthesis Companion now makes less noise, which is cool. Lastly, UI and quality of life. It says this. Here's the thing: previously named / uploaded discoveries can now be renamed and re-uploaded. Now, I thought that meant that you could rename previously uploaded discoveries, but apparently it's only named / uploaded discoveries, at least as far as I saw yesterday. So be aware, you do have to name it and then you can rename it. If you just upload it, I don't think you can rename it. So that's just what I saw based on my gameplay. Another cool thing is this is several new gestures have been added to the quick menu. I think, as far as I can tell, there's 4 new ones. We have prepare for action, which is pretty epic looking. Prepare for action. It's like a superhero pose. Kind of going through the floor there, but maybe I shouldn't stand right on the space between those. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then they have ponder. Just kind of I always equate this to looking like a farmer, just kind of looking over his field. Now what's interesting, as I saw a post, and I will put this in the edited version of the show, I saw a post on Twitter of a guy who had suggested this pose, the superhero pose, and the crossed arms poses, which is this one. He's like, oh, y'all should add this to the game. And it seems like they did. So congrats to that guy for suggesting these new gestures, because they're really cool. Of course, the 4th gesture is a new dance. Finally, we have a new dance. It's kind of goofy. It reminds me of the Fortnite dance, like the default one, you know what I mean? So I'm definitely going to get some use out of this one. Anywho, so that's a pretty cool addition. Hazardous flora are a little bigger for some reason. It says here they've been tweaked for better visibility, better damage messaging, more consistent labeling, and more appropriate amounts of camera shake. I don't know. Y'all let me know what you think of that change. To me, they just seem bigger, but I can see what they mean by appropriate amounts of camera shake, because some of them did get pretty wild. They also fixed an issue that caused biscuit recipes to be absent from the catalog, as well as a few other things. So let's take a look at that. I hadn't actually looked. I know that was something I had mentioned. Hey, there we go. I think I'd mentioned that. Well, those are recipes, but it was also... yeah, it was under cooking. It was something I'd mentioned during the Omega update, I think. Was that I couldn't see the new biscuit recipes in the catalog. There they are. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. I think they added a few other things as well. And yeah, those are the changes for No Man's Sky Worlds Part 1. It's a huge update, the big summer update. They've got the new key art, which looks lovely. And if you read the patch notes on the main menu of this game, Worlds Part 1 represents the first component of the Worlds update, with even more to come later in the summer. What that statement seems to be implying is that we're getting Worlds Part 2 by the end of the summer, which would be like the end of like September most likely. That the idea that we get 2 summer updates, or that they split the summer update into 2 large updates, is pretty cool and it's pretty unique. So if the Expedition 14 starts next week and it runs for about 6 weeks, let me see when that'll be. Because this update launched 2 days after the other expedition ended. So if that starts on the 24th, 6 weeks would be September 4th. So we might see something by September, mid-September. No promise, of course. They haven't promised it or anything. But can you imagine if we see another huge overhaul by mid-September? And believe me, we're gonna speculate later in this episode. Andre says have to go. Food on the table. Thanks. Have a nice weekend, all. Thanks for stopping by, Andre. And Schminky, thanks for the cookie. Alrighty. Well, but before we speculate on what Worlds Part 2 could hold, I want to talk about some of the issues that folks have been having with the release of No Man's Sky Worlds Part 1. So, as with every update, you're going to get some issues on the first couple days. Hello Games, they're a really small team. No Man's Sky is a huge game, and it's a huge community, millions of players. So it's almost impossible to test for all these bugs beforehand. I'm sure they catch a lot of them, but for example, yesterday I'm playing with my friend. He's running a newish save on a Steam Deck. He's playing online with me on a PS4 with a save created on August, was it 16th when it launched? Or August 9th, 2016, right? That's played through every version of the game. And so I've got this save with all this tech, all this legacy stuff. Oh, my cat's freaking out. I've got this save with all this stuff, and I'm trying to play online with this brand new save on a completely different console. And my save has been created on a different system entirely, and rewritten and upgraded. And there are so many variables they have to account for. It's insane. That said, the game is still not out on, as of recording, Xbox consoles or Switch. Now, Switch isn't surprising. It always takes like an extra week or so to land on the Switch, which is why I'm guessing they delayed the Expedition. Or not delayed, but why they chose not to release it immediately. But also, Xbox, it's always a crapshoot. You never know which console or which system's going to get it last. There was a time I remember where PC was like a day late on one of these updates. This time it's Xbox. So I know some folks are upset. A lot of folks are understanding. They just really want to play, which is fair. So to those of y'all who are waiting, gosh, I'm sorry. From what I understand, Hello Games have already sent the update to Xbox. It's just a matter of passing Xbox's certification before it'll release to the community. So, and it's the same with all consoles. It's the same with PlayStation and stuff. It just happened to get pushed through a lot sooner, as far as I know. So, I hope y'all will spare some patience. I'm sure they're working as fast as they can. The other night, Sean posted patch notes for an experimental patch. I think it was like 11 p.m. his time. So they're working hard over there. And you'll get it probably pretty soon. I wouldn't think it'd be any later than Monday, but I have nothing to inform that. I think it's also out on Mac. What other issues? Oh, so besides launching on different consoles, we also have some really weird issues. So it's touted as a universe reset, universe refresh, but different folks have been seeing different planets at the same coordinates. I noticed when I was playing that I ran into the same types of forests and the same types of deserts a lot. And normally I would consider that like bad luck, right? There's like a bajillion planets. I just so happen to get in the like 50 planets I visited, the same few ones, right? It's just bad luck. But apparently a lot of folks online have been complaining that they're seeing the same trees and the same cactus that I saw. Um, which is really unusual because this update's supposed to improve variety, but in instances like that, it feels like there's less variety because a lot of the lush planets I've seen look the same now. Alright folks, Saturday Kanaju here. So I have some updated news regarding bugs. Firstly, a lot of crashes and such were addressed in a first experimental patch that was later pushed to PC. That's cool. However, it's the new July 20th experimental patch that I have to talk about. There are two huge fixes here, in addition to many others. But the first one I want to talk about is, quote, fixed an issue that caused all the trees on some lush planets to become giant corn stalks. Thank goodness, y'all, because during my day one live stream, I came across so many planets with those big corn stalk trees, and I thought it might be a glitch, but I wasn't sure since, it could also be bad luck. But it was like, that's a lot of bad luck, right? So I'm pretty happy to see that not only was this actually a bug, but it should be fixed this coming week. So I'm looking forward to that, which is why I told folks also to wait a few days before relocating bases and stuff, because with updates as big as these, sometimes it takes a few days for it to actually settle down. And honestly, things are liable to change again, so you never know. Speaking of which, the other big change is, quote, fixed an issue that caused some planets to become infested, resulting in a loss of any settlements on that world and in minor terrain shifts, which is interesting. Oh, sorry, that's not in the quote, the interesting. Anyways, quote again. The infested status of planets has been restored to how it was pre-worlds. Newly infested planets will become uninfested, and previously infested planets will be restored as such. End quote. Essentially, they're reverting infested worlds back to where they were prior to the world's update, which is cool with me. Hopefully, these two changes will enhance the variation that Hello Games were aiming to enhance with this latest update. I also personally think that the Arizona deserts have also become more prevalent in this update, similar to the cornstalk planets. But again, that might just be anecdotal bad RNG on my game. I suppose time will tell. But as always, be sure to report bugs to Hello Games either through their Zendesk tickets, through the appropriate Steam forum threads, or the weekly bug report thread on the r/No Man's Sky the game subreddit. The fact that these changes were pushed to experimental on a Saturday, and the fact that I think the first experimental patch notes went out at like 11:30 Sean's time, that just demonstrates that Hello Games, they're taking fixes very seriously. They're working pretty hard. I just hope they're getting some sleep too. Thanks, Hello Games. I know a lot of people are like ready to close up their bases and move somewhere else, which more power to you if you want to do that. But if you're on the fence, it might pay to wait a few more days to make sure Hello Games don't change the universe again. Because they're very likely to, and Worlds Part 2 is probably also going to have an effect on oceans and things of that sort. So yeah, I'd give them a few days to sort things out, and then figure out if you want to move or not. I'm going to end up moving some bases for other reasons, but I've also been encountering a lot of freezing on PS5. I think during my live stream yesterday, in 3 hours, it must have frozen like half a dozen times, if not more. It doesn't crash, it just freezes. As well as water. In the deep dive and in the trailer, it's shown generating dynamic foam effects. So around the edges, at the tips of waves, it's generating foam, much like actual water would. But in game, I haven't seen those effects or screen space reflections, right? So the water is not as reflective as it shows in the trailer, which that's not a dig against Hello Games. The trailer showcases the highest quality graphic settings enabled, and different consoles are going to have different graphical settings. So PS5 might not have those foam and screen space reflections, but it could also be a bug, right? There have been times when certain things are missing and it's just a bug week one. So And then, of course, there were other various little glitches. Like, for some reason, the water kept disappearing while I was playing with my friend yesterday. It just looked like a dry desert instead of an ocean. It's very interesting. But as much fun as bugs are, what I'm really excited to talk about is what might be coming for Worlds Part 2. Because this is the first update titled Part 1. It's the first update where I feel like I can more safely speculate, because Worlds is a huge update. It's fixing a lot of things we never thought they'd fix. And the fact that they're calling it Part 1 means we're probably going to get another update that also fixes things or improves things that maybe we had given up hope on previously. One interesting thing about the Worlds update is that Sean has said that they're bringing tech and techniques and things like that they've developed for Light No Fire and bringing it back to No Man's Sky. So when we're thinking about what might be in Worlds Part 2, maybe we should think about what's in Light No Fire and what they could bring to No Man's Sky. So let's speculate about what we might see for Part 2. Now, of course, I don't have any idea what's going to be in Part 2. So these are just going to be my best guesses. Some of them are educated guesses. Some of them are pure speculation, just based on what I would love to see. So, Worlds Part 1, we're assuming the second update is called Worlds Part 2. It might follow a similar theme. So Worlds was intended as like a universe refresh, improving the simulation, improving variety, adding gameplay. That's what Sean kept talking about in the deep dive. Improving variety and adding gameplay to planets. So, I think it's fair to assume we're going to get something along those lines for Worlds Part 2. What that means, I'm not entirely sure, but we do have a lot of clues. Howdy folks, Saturday Kanaju here again. So firstly, I want to mention a tweet by Martin Griffiths, who is an engine programmer for Hello Games. He refers to Worlds Part 1 as, quote, the first part of our graphics/Worlds revamp, which pretty much confirms most speculation that Worlds Part 2 will follow a similar theme of improving world variety in some form. I'd also like to reiterate that while I'm not covering most of the datamined stuff in this podcast for spoiler reasons, there's a lot of datamined stuff for Part 2. If you can't help yourself, do check out @bomber_that on Twitter. He's doing some great work, and this stuff looks fantastic. But again, not covering it in this podcast. Y'all let me know if you want me to do like a separate video for that. Anyways, back to the old me. For one, they didn't touch underwater biomes at all. They added a lot of new terrestrial biomes, but no new underwater biomes, which we haven't seen an underwater biome refresh since Abyss in 2018. So this seems like a perfect time for that. We also haven't seen a caves update since the prisms refresh in, was that 2021? I want to say 2021, I think. So not too long, but I do feel like caves have been neglected for the majority of No Man's Sky's life. I'd love to see more variety. I'd love to see more incentives to visit caves. I'd love to see more gameplay down there, right? Maybe there's more intricate mining gameplay. Maybe there are gas pockets. There are veins of minerals, rare minerals. Because we have minerals on the surface of planets, but there should be more minerals underground, right? Ooh, Schmenky says, improved level of detail of planets seen from afar and from orbit, I hope. Yes. So Sean, when he's talking in his deep dive, he says something like, oh, flying through clouds, which you can see from space. But really, you can't see clouds from space right now. There's like a texture on planets that looks like clouds, but it doesn't reflect the actual cloud patterns on the surface. So if they were to update planet tech so we could actually see storm cells and stuff like that from space, that would be really cool, because then you could choose to fly to like a sunnier area or an overcast area. Although based on how they render storms, I'm not sure if that's something they can really accomplish. Yeah, Shmanky says faint clouds. Yeah, right now they're fake clouds. That would be really cool. Let's see what else would be really cool. I could also see them adding even more terrestrial biomes. Since they were able to add these without resetting the universe, it's possible they could add even more. I kind of hope they do. Not that, like, not to sound spoiled, like, oh, you only gave us, however many new biomes, just because I think it'd be even more exciting. They were able to add new fauna to existing biomes, so it'd be cool if they added new fauna. If they do an underwater refresh, I hope they give us underwater bosses of some kind, new abyssal horrors, new fish types, new kinds of underwater plants and resources, gameplay, maybe even new points of interest. Multiple biomes on the same planet, but I think Sean said he didn't want that. Yeah, Schmenky, I mean, you do have a point. I could see it. Part of me thinks they might save that for Light No Fire, but at the same time, they've developed that tech for Light No Fire, so they could bring more biomes to a single planet. As is, though, I don't know if they need to. I'd be down for it, but I'm not exactly expecting that. Ooh, terrain variation, flat plains. So Schmenky says terrain variation, flat plains. I would love to see more terrain variation. That actually brings me to my next point, which is some things that people have noticed in game. So actually, since I have the game in front of me, while I'm talking about it, I can go look that up. So in this update, they refreshed a lot of the environments, but they didn't touch the terrain. And it was the same thing in the Origins update. So the way they accomplished adding new terrain in Origins was by adding completely new planets, right? They couldn't touch planets players had already visited because it might destroy their existing bases, which people put a lot of work into. So they could refresh the biomes and the things on the surface, but they couldn't touch the terrain itself. And it's the same situation now, right? People have built even more bases, so we can't touch the terrain. If you want new terrain, we're going to have to add new planets, which they've done before, so that's 100% possible. And this update is called Worlds, right? So we could see completely new worlds. But what I think we might be seeing, and this is speculation, nothing's confirmed, what we might be seeing are new systems with new planets, which I think would just be the coolest thing. And that idea is based off of, oh my gosh, my evidence. It's right there. Okay, let me just fall down and then it should spawn me back. There we go. Okay, so here, this is perfect. As you know, we have 4 types of stellar metal, right? One for each type of star. You can find copper and yellow stars, cadmium and red stars, emerald and green stars, and indium and blue stars. And those are the 4 types of star systems we have. However, as you can see, as of this update, there's now UI for a 5th metallic element, a purple one. So where would you get a purple stellar metal from, right? Probably purple star systems. And those purple star systems could contain planets with completely new terrain, completely new rules, things that aren't possible in the current systems. And what's cool about those is you could even add different requirements to reach them. So they're not something new players would be able to access necessarily. Kind of like with Echoes, how autophage content, all of that is end game. You have to beat the main game before you can access it. And that's really cleverly done. This could be another end game element where they put more difficult enemies, more difficult challenges for players who definitely have the technology installed. So they don't have to balance for a wide range of players. They only have to balance for those experienced enough to reach these systems. Schmenky says, haven't they used up the 64-bit number to make existing planets? I didn't think they could make new systems or planets. Well, that's the thing. That's what people thought initially. But once they added new planets in Origins, it seems like they figured it out. Somehow. And so if they figured it out, then based on this purple metal here, it looks like they might have figured it out again. You also ask, is that purple thing some unintended placeholder? Yeah, it is a placeholder, and I don't think they intended it to be there. I've also seen screenshots that if you're in creative mode, there's a new piece of starship tech, which also, it's much like the cadmium, emerald, or indium drives. It seems like it's intended to be a purple drive. So I'm hoping Worlds Part 2 means we get to see purple systems. Now, what's interesting about the color purple in No Man's Sky is that's associated with the Abyss, with the Atlantid. And we've been teased The Atlantid, the Abyss, that conflict's been teased for a long time. Last year we got Dissonant Worlds with purple crystals and purple sentinels, all kinds of new stuff. This might be just a completely new type of system. These could be something like portals to the worlds of glass, right? Maybe these are like alternate worlds. Maybe these are all very dangerous. Might be a whole new aesthetic, or it might just be a new type of procedural generation where we still get the paradise planets and the radioactive worlds and what have you. I have no idea what this could mean, but I am excited. I'm really hyped for the next update. I have no idea what it's going to be, but it could be really big. It could be bigger than part 1. Additionally, how else could we interpret the update worlds? It could be adding, well, again, this is just baseless speculation, but folks have been asking for gas giants for a long time. I would love to see gas giants, even if there's not much gameplay involved with them. Just to see them would be really cool. Another thing we could see as a result of this update would be water worlds completely covered in water. And the reason I say that is now we have aqua jets, so we no longer need land to touch down on a planet. We could land on the surface of an ocean and then dive from there. And that would introduce a whole new set of exploration challenges, especially if you tie that together with an update to underwater biomes and underwater gameplay. You put those things together, and I mean, another thing to remember, in this update they upgraded the underwater jetpack visuals and the swimming animations, in addition to the surface of the water. So they're working on water stuff. We just haven't seen any changes to the gameplay yet. So that's something I think I would love to see. Some other things have been data mined, actually, and I don't want to spoil those for y'all. I don't mind mentioning this because it's in the game. You use a portal, you'll see this, or you go in creative mode, you'll see it in your menu and whatnot. But there are things that have been data mined by that Bomber Boy on Twitter at bomber_that. I love that Bomber Boy. I've used them as a source in multiple podcasts, and I'll let you go ahead and visit their profile if you want to learn more. But let me just say, the stuff I've seen, if that stuff comes to the game, I will be a very happy camper. Some of that is like dream update stuff. One of those things looks like something I saw in the Light No Fire trailer, which tracks. I don't know what they're cooking for part 2, but I am extremely excited. Another thing that was not data mined, but actually somewhat announced back on an experimental patch before Worlds, was cloud saves. That was the one thing I was expecting from this update. That wasn't there, and it probably just needs more time in the oven. But that was an experimental patch in mid-July. Mentioned, testing changes to save files to implement cloud saves, and I think they're getting closer to that. I think some icons were data mined, so maybe we'll see cloud saves in part 2, which would be really interesting. If we're looking at Light No Fire and what they've shown us in the trailer, there's melee combat, so maybe we'll get melee combat in No Man's Sky, dedicated melee combat, not just like hit the melee button and your stick does something like this. That could be really cool. Maybe we'll see more enemy types, like the kind we've seen in Light No Fire. Maybe we're going to see boats. If they've updated water, they've updated the ability to land on water, and we might see water worlds, right? If that's the case, maybe they'll give us a new exocraft that floats and bobs on the water. That might be too much to expect, but you never know. What else could apply to worlds? Schmanky says underwater bosses. Exactly. Yeah, I would love underwater bosses. We could even see in these new purple systems underwater sentinels, because there are no sentinels underwater. But that could be an interesting thing to see. I'd love to see like some kind of octopus boss battle or shark boss battle, the Kraken, space. Well, we have space whales, but imagine space ocean whales. You know what I mean? That could be really cool. Of course, more lore, more loot. I've always wanted to see planetary dungeons. Those would be cool. Something that's been very much neglected since it was added to the game in 2021 are settlements. I understand they're not playable on Switch, so that might be why they're ignoring them. But settlements are the kind of thing I just found that tech fascinating, and they're the most varied, most populous places in the game, and most populated systems have them. They're all different. They're procedurally generated. They have unique architecture. I just feel like they're not very interactive. They don't interact with any other part of the game. You know, you don't get ship upgrades from them. You don't. There's not unique loot, unique recipes to find there. There's not unique missions. They don't interact with any system other than the Trace of Metal quest. Otherwise, they're just completely not integrated to the rest of the game. They don't factor into exploration, to progression of any kind. And so maybe those will be something we see in the update. And something to kind of back that up is I'll see if I put it on screen, but in the key art for the new update, you can see in the back, like one of the 4-player guys is like looking through binoculars, and he's looking at something that kind of looks like a skyline a little bit. All right, you've got a natural landscape, and then there's something that could be considered like a tall settlement. Now, I understand settlements that they used in the Frontiers key art also looked a bit like a city, and we know they're not that much like cities, but it'd be really interesting if they did something with that. Planetary dungeons, I think I already mentioned that, but those would be great. I would also love to see an overhaul to points of interest, either adding natural points of interest or just revamping the ones we've had for 8 years. You know, implement some of the tech that they use for settlements to build more interesting little things across planets. Like, I even imagine points of interest as big as settlements, but that you can't claim as a player. You know, they actually have quests and things like that. Fully built settlements for you to just visit. That would be really interesting. But I don't know if that's something they're working on. Schwenky says, would be nice if the game could lead you to user-generated bases. Yeah, I mean, that would be cool. Yeah, I'm always a big fan of like giving players more tools to create things. People have been asking for like mission creators and stuff like that. I don't know if we'll get that in Worlds. This might be more themed towards, you know, visual and gameplay variety. But that'd be cool to see for sure. What else might we see in Worlds Part 2? Y'all let me know in the comments too, because I'm sure everyone has ideas. And this is the first time we actually kind of know what the next update is. Like, at least we know it's going to be called Worlds Part 2. And it's probably going to arrive in less than 2 months. So, I mean, hey, full steam ahead. No promises it'll be as big as this one, but I don't know. I don't think they'd use that naming convention if they didn't want us to be excited. So, I'm excited. Planetary archives are kind of underutilized, so our trade posts, it'd be cool if those got a revamp. Similar to how space stations got a revamp. As Schmanky said, it'd be cool to see clouds from space, weather from space. I would also love if you watched a couple months ago, I made an hour-long video talking about how I would improve variation or variety. And surprisingly, a few things from that video made it into this update. And now I always say I'm not claiming Hello Games watches my videos or that they got those ideas from me. These updates take months in advance. Like, me putting out a video at the 11th hour probably doesn't change their release plans at all. But certain things like nighttime skies, watercolor, stuff like really simple stuff, that was implemented. I say simple on my part, right? I'm not saying it was simple for them to implement. But I also talked a lot about how to vary gameplay from planet to planet. And I talked about status affecting fruits and varying common resources. I saw someone comment, I forget where it was, if it was Twitter or Reddit. They said if Worlds Part 2 is just changing the common resource plants on every planet, they'd be happy. And I'm with them. I think that would be a big deal if they decide to give us more meshes for common resources and for common minerals, because we see the same glowing rocks and flowers on pretty much every planet, right? We have the same sodium flowers. Oh, that's actually a small thing. We have the same sodium flowers, the same dihydrogen crystals. And yeah, the flowers change a little bit from planet to planet, but they all feel pretty much the same. So it would be great if that was part of Worlds Part 2, right? Because that would go a long way to making existing biomes feel different. More advanced fauna behaviors would be interesting. Having them interact with the deadly plants would be cool. Yeah, there. If you're interested in what could be in Worlds Part 2, definitely give that 1 hour video a watch. I'll link it at the end. It's called How I Would Improve Variety in No Man's Sky. Not saying they're watching it and they're going to implement that stuff, but I'm just saying a lot of my ideas for how we could improve planetary variety specifically, which is what Worlds is doing. I have an hour of ideas there, so if you want to check that out, be my guest and let me know what you think in the comments below. But I think that's probably enough speculation for now. This has been a long episode. It's been a lot of fun though. I'd like to thank my channel members for showing up, valued members of the channel. And hopefully I'll do more episodes like this. Y'all let me know what you think of this new format. It's not my usual format. It takes a bit longer to record, but I think it's great because it gives members an opportunity to chime in and interact with the stream. Well, that's it for the Deep Space Travel Break episode 32, talking all about No Man's Sky Worlds 5.0. Man, I could probably keep talking about it. But the thing is, this is day 3 of recording in a row. I've done live streams 3 days in a row. I did an 8.5 hour live stream on release day, which you can view on my channel page. 3 or 4 hour video or live stream yesterday, and then this recording here. So my voice is getting a little tired. But if you're interested in my initial impressions, what I thought of it, and all the bugs I ran into, again, is kind of buggy, especially yesterday. Feel free to check out those streams. And of course, let me know in the comments what your experience has been like. Have you run into those two kinds of lush and desert planets? You have the corncob tree lush planets and the Arizona desert planets. I've run into so many of those. Have you run into any other bugs? Are you waiting for the update to drop on Xbox maybe? And do you plan to play the expedition? What do you think of the variety? What do you think of the new boss battles? I mean, I want to hear y'all's thoughts. There's so much interesting stuff, and I especially want to know what you think is going to be in Worlds Part 2. That's almost the most exciting part of all this. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to my members. And thank you so much to Hello Games for the 8 years of incredible updates. I'm looking forward to Light No Fire. And if you're looking forward to Light No Fire and more No Man's Sky news and updates, please leave a like on the video and subscribe. You know, I publish all kinds of No Man's Sky stuff. And let me tell you, this update has inspired me. I'm looking forward to making some good videos about this stuff because it's got me thinking. But anyways, thanks again. Have fun out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.